So let me invite my colleague Karockskai, who is happy to show you the new revamped beam and column tool in Archicad.
Thank you, Ákos. Thank you, Ákos. Thank you, Ákos. I'm on. So, welcome everyone. And as Ákos mentioned, we renewed the beam and column tools in Archicad 23. And in the next few minutes, I would like to show you these enhancements through 3 different structural types. Precast concrete, steel and glued laminated timber. And we're going to have one extra there. So, let's see the first example. Let's say you have to design an industrial building where the structure is proposed to be precast concrete by the structural engineer. And previously, how you could do that? Let's take a look at a column and beam joint of such a precast system. So this is what I would like to model in Archicad, right? Previously, how you could do that? By using Morse, using custom GDL solutions, which was possible, but it was quite cumbersome and time-consuming. And at the same time, getting out documentation, scheduling of such elements was quite difficult. But in Archicad 23, with a dedicated solution, we can do it much easier. So let's try and recreate the previous connection that I just showed you. Now, one of the biggest enhancements that we introduced to beams and columns is that now we can use multiple segments within one element, which will make you possible to create more detailed geometries. So if we take a look at this, I don't have a proper support for my beams, so by adding a couple of simple segments, I can edit it on a segment level and give it a proper support. Right, so right now I have a simple cantilevered support, but based on the input from the structural engineer, I would like to create a corbel type support. And doing that, it's possible to, we introduce a new functionality to make it possible, and these are the tapered segments, which meaning that the dimensions of the cross sections can alter throughout the axis length of the column or the beam. So right now we can very quickly create such corbel type supports for the beams. Now, so far this is all right, but let's take a look at the beam and make it a proper ending as well. Similar to the columns, I can add segments to it by clicking on the reference line. And right now, as you can see, it looks correct, but this is only a result of the priority-based connections at the support. So since we are using parametric complex profiles, I can get rid of the girder depth or just reduce it. And since I do not need a stronger support throughout the beam, I can make it a little bit thinner on the top. But right now, I have 2 different versions of the same parametric complex profile on these 2 parts. Now, how could I bridge the gap? By combining the tapered segment capability with parametric complex profiles, I can get a real smooth transition between these 2 segments, allowing me to create such connections. Now, using these multi-segmented beams and columns, we can very quickly, in about 20-30 minutes, we can model such a huge industrial building which is structurally correct. So, such as the roof supporting structure beams with tapered segments and custom endings. Or for example, we can take a look at the precast pocket footing of the columns, which is just a simple 2-segmented column basically. Alright, but besides the proper structurally correct 3D representation and modeling of such elements, we also have to take a look at the 2D documentation in all projected views. So let's take a look at the floor plan representation and the foundation drawings of this building. And now in Archicad 23, we introduced the cover fill functionality for both beams and columns. So now you can have a proper floor plan representation in all projected views. But we went one step further as well. And now we can display hidden elements underneath slabs. Completely correct. So let's just cut a hole into my slabs here. And as you can see, we have within one element, wherever the element is hidden, we can display it with dashed lines. Wherever it is visible, it is displayed with solid lines. Now, what do you think will happen if I adjust only this one edge of the slab? Can the representation follow? Well, sure it can. And I believe this is a very nice example on how much emphasis we put on making Archicad right to the finest detail. All right. In the next example, in the second example, let's say you have to design a sports hall, a handball court to be specific, where the functional requirements are quite simple. You have to put a roof and some walls above the court. And previously, you could do this, but let's also add a little bit of twist to this building. And instead of an orthogonal grid, let's make it a skewed and distorted grid. Now, in this case, as you can see, each and every frame is slightly bit different than the other. Previously, it was quite difficult to model this, but in Archicad 23, we introduced a new two-point placement method for both the beams and columns. So now you can connect any 2 point in space in 3D very easily and very quickly. So in just a couple of seconds, I can model one of my frames, and the same goes for beams as well. And in this case, I'm using multi-segmented beams as well, with tapered segments, giving me a correct structural representation of such frames. And there's one more thing, that we introduced custom end-cut angles for these columns and beams, so you can have nice and clean connections for your beam column connections, such as this one. Now let's take a look at on the inside when the building is done. And similarly to the frames, you can very quickly and very easily model the cross bracing or the purlins of the roof structure, allowing you to work correctly and accurately and still focus on the design. All right, so far we've been dealing with orthogonal or linear structures. So let's take a look at something different. I have a water sports arena here, and I would like to create the roof structure of this building using long span glued laminated timber. Now previously we could create curved beams in Archicad, but only in a horizontal plane. Now it is possible to curve beams in a vertical plane, allowing you to model such buildings. So I just simply grab the reference line of this beam, and I can create these vertically curved structures. Again, let's take a look at how it looks from the inside. I believe it's quite impressive, isn't it? But where else would we use vertically curved beams? For example, in case of historical projects and renovations. So we've took the tool for a ride, and we tried to see how it performs with by creating this church building. And as you can see, we've modeled the columns with multi-segmented columns using parametric complex profiles. The vertical arches are modeled with beams, and even the ribs of the vaults are created with the brand new and renewed Archicad 23 beams and columns. So I hope in the past few minutes I could show you how powerful the new tools will be, and with that you will be able to create such projects and much more, I believe. Thank you, and back to Ákos.